This is the
Five Starr
Podcast.
Let me talk to you. Hi. What do you guys want to talk about? This is such good shit. Thanks, guys. Back to you.
Tell you what, I didn't think it was possible, but somehow this weekend came through for me. Friday night, went to the Peacock Library to see what horrors awaited me with Retro Raw from 1995. And apparently I did not take into account that Valentine's Day was considered a holiday season for the WWF. So no Retro Raw. And then Saturday, I woke up expecting a normal day of teaching and other work-related shenanigans. Turns out I only needed to go into work later in the afternoon for about a few hours, and that was pretty much the extent of my work day. So I actually had a little bit of a downtime this weekend. It was nice. I don't get them too often, but when they come up, I take advantage of them. So, yeah. Gonna be in for a short ride this week. We got Retro NXT and SmackDown on today's agenda, both of which really shouldn't take all that long to talk about. We'll probably get this one done in about 45 minutes or so. So that'll be an easy edit for Monday. I still need to set aside some time on Sunday to watch the next episode of Crockett TV. And those always take a few hours in the evening just because of how long the shows are. So I need to make sure I carve out enough time. But at least I won't be pressed for time this go around. All things considered, this weekend worked in my favor. Now we'll see how the rest of the week shapes up. Apparently we're expected to get some snow here in Pittsburgh on Tuesday, which kind of blows. Things are pretty good, though. Schedule's a little less hectic right now. That's good, because that meant I could actually watch these shows over the weekend and not get sidetracked with other stuff. Like, I could actually watch the shows and take efficient notes. So, now what do you say we dive into SmackDown from Friday night? A lot of stuff to talk about with this one, which is kind of shocking in many ways, because I usually don't have anything remotely interesting to say about SmackDown. Mostly because the shows are very one-dimensional and boring. But with no Retro Raw episode review, that'll give me some time to go more in depth with some of the more recent WWE news. We'll talk about SmackDown in a sec here, but the hotter topic was everything that went down at this WrestleMania 40 press conference / media scrum / drama theater showcase. I don't even know what the hell you would call it. But it got people talking. And all of it was to be addressed live by the, and I quote, Chief Content Officer, Triple H. And I had to ask this question right from the jump because as soon as I heard that title, I was floored. What is a Chief Content Officer? And why is he the chief? Why not the president? I mean, I know they used to have a chief branding officer position. I think that was Stephanie's role. I mean, I've heard of C-suite jobs like COO, CEO. Those are all at least common types of higher executive positions in bigger enterprises. I had no clue that there was a thing called a CCO. It's got to be a bogus title. But anyway, Let's talk about what went down at that WrestleMania press conference before we get into the logistics of how they opened SmackDown. I did actually take the time to sit down and watch that entire 22-minute clip on YouTube. The whole face-off with the Bloodline, The Rock, Seth Rollins, and Cody Rhodes. And it was certainly a WWE segment. If the goal was to take a UFC idea and drop a little bit of sports entertainment spice into the mixing bowl, well, they definitely accomplished that. I mean, honestly, this was something that would have fit perfectly on a regular episode of Raw or SmackDown. I don't know why it needed to be its own separate little event. And I'm not going to go into the whole bit-by-bit analysis of everything, because that would take another 20-plus minutes. The main premise was The Rock coming out and trolling all the Cody crybabies in the audience, the ones that kept chanting, "We want Cody." And Rock is definitely towing that line right now where, I mean, I can't really say he's a full-fledged heel, because I don't think that would be really accurate based on the way he's conducting himself right now. He was definitely more snide toward the fans. Like, he definitely pushed the envelope a little bit. And, they had the whole Samoan Dynasty family tree up on the LED board. Rock was hyping the match with him and Roman as the biggest WrestleMania event of all time. And while the fans are just continuing to shower him with boos, eventually Cody interrupts. And by the way, they cut out a good chunk of the whole Rock verbiage where he was getting drowned out by the boos. Like, go watch the full clip on YouTube if you want to see what I'm talking about. Those "We Want Cody" chants were definitely audible. I mean, there were some people that loved The Rock, too. That's always going to be a common occurrence because he's such a megastar. But it wasn't 50-50. It was like 70-30. Maybe even 80-20 at times. But the point is, Cody interrupted. He explained that it's not Roman's choice to decide what the main event of WrestleMania is. So Cody has finally made his choice. He wants Roman. And, I mean, even though it kind of defies all logic of everything they previously established last week, I mean, they made the graphic and pretty much solidified that it's going to be Roman and Cody for the undisputed Universal title. But the big angle at the end was Cody telling Rock and Roman that their ancestors would be ashamed if they saw what's become of those two now. And then Rock got in Cody's face and said when he talks about Roman's family, he's also talking about Rock's family. And it all led to him bitch-slapping Cody in the face. And all hell kind of broke loose at the end while the various parties were trying to separate everybody. And, well, actually, before I give my overall take of everything that went down and what I think it all represents, beyond the obvious course-correcting measures, let's talk about the opening segment on SmackDown this week, because it does tie hand in hand. So here comes the Chief Content Officer, Triple H. Never going to get over how stupid that sounds. And what makes it funnier is that on the name graphic when he comes out to the ring, it just reads Paul Levesque, his given Christian name. Yet they're still calling him by his kayfabe name, Triple H. The whole thing's absurd. And of course, Nick Aldis is out there alongside Adam Pearce. They were both at the press conference too. I neglected to mention that. And Hunter did some of that best for business authoritative decision-making by saying he's the one that makes the calls around here. And whether or not some people like it, the WrestleMania main event will be Roman defending the undisputed Universal title against Cody Rhodes. And so it all begs the obvious question. Had the backlash from last week's show been so severe that it forced WWE into going back to their original Roman-Cody match? Or is it really just part of some scheming, overly convoluted work to keep the fans on edge until Mania, just kind of wondering how The Rock is going to factor into everything? I mean, he's there. He's clearly going to be involved somehow. Whether or not he wrestles Roman in the main event of WrestleMania, the people are still going to be on pins and needles waiting to see whether or not he gets involved. And whether or not that involvement is aimed to fuck over Cody or fuck over Roman, it leaves that dangling carrot over people's heads. And I like that. But here's what I'm confused about. Okay, so they did all that press conference stuff. They did the opener this week. What was the point of everything that happened on last week's SmackDown? When Cody went out there and outright told Roman, I'm going to beat you for the Universal title, just not at WrestleMania. And then we got the face-off with Roman and Rock as Cody walked out and let those two have the ring together. Now, less than a week later, we get this really bizarre press conference where Rock and Roman, the alleged two guys that were going to face off in Mania in the biggest dream match of all time, now they're voluntarily standing side by side, basically going after Cody together. Didn't Cody and Rock hug and shake hands like 1 week ago? Or did I just dream that all happened? Really, the only thing I can suspect that it boils down to is they realized just how bad the backlash was. And rather than risking turning away any last-minute ticket sales or pissed-off fans that already bought a ticket to see Roman and Cody for the title to begin with, they just said, all right, let's stick with the game plan. And we'll try to factor in Rock somehow. Because a lot of what they did in the opener here totally negated so much of what happened last Friday. All of a sudden, Cody and Rock went from chummy pals to bitter rivals, where Cody's calling Rock a disreputable human being. And none of it really makes any sense if you look at the timeline of how everything transpired just in a 7-day window. Somehow we got from point A to point C, and point B just totally got lost in the shuffle. So I'm kind of thinking their plan backfired, and they said, all right, never mind this Roman Rock match. We can do that another time if we really want to. If these people don't see Cody beat Roman for the title at Mania, we might start a fucking riot in Philly. Or even worse, the fans might hijack the biggest main event of all time, and it'll give the company even more bad PR. Which they don't need right now, trust me, they got plenty of that. So whatever happened between last Friday to where we are now, I guess we just pretend it never happened? It's kind of where I'm at. Very puzzled. I don't understand how Rock and Roman go from a heated stare down to just standing by each other's side less than a week later at a press scrum. Or how Cody goes from embracing Rocky with a hug and a handshake to, never mind, you're a piece of shit and your grandfather spits in your general direction. It's just, this escalated rather quickly. We'll just leave it at that. Now, by that same token, it also leaves Rollins without an opponent in Mania to defend his loser bracket world title. So that will now be determined at the Elimination Chamber, where apparently Raw and SmackDown guys are going to compete to qualify, even though the World Heavyweight Championship is a Raw exclusive belt. So I'm not entirely sure how SmackDown talents are able to challenge for it, but what's the brand split at the end of the day, right? Haven't we already long since established that never meant jack shit to begin with? So they had 12 guys up on the Jumbotron to show us who was going to be qualifying for this match. Most of whom got mild to fairly big pops, with the exception of Logan Paul and Dirty Dom, both of whom got showered with booze. And especially when they got to Dom, I laughed. He has the best punchable douchebag face on that roster, and God, he's got so much heat. It's awesome. Anyway, the opener this week was Drew McIntyre versus AJ Styles. It is not a traditional tournament per se. It's sort of a one fall winner advances thing. Like, they don't have brackets or anything like that. And as soon as LA Knight's music played, before they even rang the bell to start it, I said, well, we all know who's losing this match. Could not have telegraphed that anymore if they tried. But the wrestling between the two was good. LA Knight was fun to listen to on commentary, jaw-jacking and taking shots at AJ whenever he got the opportunity. There was also a point here where Wade Barrett outright said, his loins have been tingling since LA Knight came out to sit down at the commentary booth. To which my first thought was, Mr. Knight, back away very slowly. Don't think twice. Don't look back. Get that restraining order filed as quickly as humanly possible. So both guys are in there doing their thing. I mean, they're both strong workers, so they had some decent chemistry together. Drew was favoring the knee for a while, and they were kind of milking the setup for the Claymore kick. They actually did a really sweet-looking spot where Drew caught AJ going for his springboard forearm. While AJ was still perched on the top rope, Drew just punched him in the face, and AJ took this massive bump out to the floor, sort of like he was dead. Like, the camera didn't really do a good job capturing the whole thing. I mean, we only saw like a split frame of AJ falling and kind of landing on his stomach. I was like, damn. They should have gone a wide shot or something. But of course, they brawl over to the announce booth. Ends up with AJ getting thrown toward LA Knight's feet so he could dump a bottle of water on him. And then Drew shoved AJ into Knight. And while AJ was going for a small package on Drew, LA Knight hit the ring apron for the distraction spot. Ate a right hand from AJ. And then Drew hit him with a Claymore for the 3 count. Very prototypical dumb babyface finish, but, I mean, to tell you the truth, I can't even really tell who's babyface and who's heel in wrestling anymore to begin with. Like, based on what they did here, I mean, Drew was the one selling the knee injury, so I kind of presumed he was the de facto babyface. And like, AJ and Knight have been feuding for a while on TV, but neither of them have been clear-cut good guys or bad guys. I don't know, there's a lot of shades of gray happening right now in WWE in the personality department. Again, very predictable finish. I mean, you could see the distraction spot coming a mile away. But Drew advancing kind of sets up his story for WrestleMania. His story of saving the world title. Or something like that. I don't really remember what he said in his promo from earlier. I kind of tuned that out. I mean, we were like 20 minutes into the show before we even got our first lockup for the night. The first quarter of the show was nothing but straight talking, which I know is WWE's forte. They love them some talk segments on this show. Speaking of talk segments, Sammy got one of those this week. Actually bringing up some valid, interesting points in his promo that I almost completely forgot about until he mentioned it. Since we are coming up on Elimination Chamber, y'all remember what last year's Elimination Chamber main event was? In Canada? Roman Reigns versus Sami Zayn for the Universal title. I believe would wound up being either my top 2 or top 3 favorite match of the year. It was high up on the list, I remember that. Arguably when Sami was white hot with the crowd. Maybe even more so than Cody Rhodes is right now. My, how 12 months makes a difference. So from that point, we had about 5 minutes of infomercial stuff that I mostly skipped through. There was something in there with the suspect sissies that I did not even bother acknowledging. Neither did the tribal chief. And the next thing I wrote down in my notes was the following sentence. a girls' qualifying match for the Elimination Chamber, because of course there is. I mean, after all, if the guys get one, you gotta give the girls one. One of the more barbaric gimmick structures in the history of modern WWF. Yeah, so fuck it. Let's have the girls wrestle in one, too. It'll be fun. It'll be all-inclusive and shit. So the match is Bianca Belair versus Mia Yim. I'm a fan of Bianca. Never had a bad thing to say about Mia's work. So I kindly decided to have this match on in the background as I was doing some other stuff. From what I did see, kind of looked like your archetypal girls match in WWE. They do a lot of stuff. A lot of their spots look very choreographed and very rehearsed. Like you can tell they went out of their way to pre-plan a lot of shit in the locker room beforehand. In comparison to most girls' matches I see, it was probably fine. Doesn't really change my stance on what I think of a lot of women's wrestling in general right now. Between the two major companies, it's a whole lot of quantity and very limited quality. And Bianca and Mia, I would consider some of the better talents out there today. But again, that's the problem with being force-fed women's wrestling on a consistent week-by-week basis. What used to be an attraction on a wrestling card back in the day is now just standard run-of-the-mill expectation. And because there are nowhere near the amount of great female talent in the current market as compared to the male talent, the bad women's matches always stand out a lot more. And again, it's not to say this is a bad match. I think a lot of it kind of comes down to how the girls are trained these days. They're kind of taught that cool spots are the way to go, and they're how you get over in the business now. So rather than learn how to actually work on proper basics, they immediately go to all the choreographed, flashy shit, and most of it looks sloppy. Just because there aren't enough girls that can really do that elite level stuff like the guys can. At least not effectively. That's really what I got out of all this, though. A lot of spots, a lot of pre-planned material, some of which look better than others. And Bianca predictably wins because she's clearly a bigger star than Mia is, at least with how she's presented. And that's the other problem with modern women's wrestling in 2024. You got a couple girls like Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair that have all the tools in terms of star power. But then you got like 50 underneath middle of the card girls that nobody gives a crap about just because of the way they're presented. The fact that the majority of them are green as fuck. And between Mia and Bianca, like they actually have some experience. But why have I ever been given any indication to view Mia Yim as a star? She's never booked in title programs. She rarely wins. She's a background player in a semi-non-existent faction with AJ and the Ball Jobbers. Who cares? Clearly, they don't see her as a big deal in this company, so why should I? But yeah, girls' chamber match. Here we go, baby. I hope they paint it pink just to capture the aesthetic well. I'll tell you who does come off like a star, though, is Braun motherfucking Breaker. And if we're still going to call him Seth frickin' Rollins on this show, let's just go all in with the Braun Breaker gimmick. He's Braun motherfucking Breaker. God, what a megastar he's going to be. Walks into Triple H's office in that three-piece suit, well-groomed, looks like $1 million. He's well-spoken. I mean, you'd never think he was a Steiner if you look at him for 3 seconds. But give him a reason to fight, you'll see the intensity boil over. It's Rick Steiner and Scott Steiner in the flesh. But he's here to pick Hunter's brain, and figure out what the best solution is for his career, whether or not he should sign with Raw or SmackDown, because he's got both contracts up in the air right now. He's weighing his options. And right before Hunter can give him an answer, here comes that greaseball Paul Heyman from under the floorboards. And he does the old condescending handshake with Breakker. And of course, Breakker goes along with it because he doesn't know any better. Paulie's the master manipulator, as we all know. And then the conversation turns to Hunter and Heyman. They really don't exchange much back and forth before Paul says that he'll come back next week at a better time. But he's going to bring Rock and Roman with him. So that was a good omen of things to come. And I really hope Braun signs with SmackDown, but I mean, with his level of potential, I could see him ending up on Raw feuding with, say, a Gunther for the IC title. But boy, you want to talk about a surefire way to get that guy over in a hurry. Have him go out there and beat Gunther for the IC title in like 2 minutes at a Big Four pay-per-view. It'll be the ultimate difference maker. Like, him and Gunther could have a hell of a program together. I could also see him beating up Logan Paul and winning the U.S. title, but I don't know. Tomato kind of situation there. So then we go back to the ring for a top-of-the-hour Bayley promo. And she's now full-fledged babyface. She mentioned that Damage Control meant everything to her, but the fans have been on the ride with her since the very beginning. They know about her passion for the sport of wrestling and what drives her to be the best. She thought she could take Damage Control on that ride with her, but plans change. So, I mean, the promo itself was good. Somehow she started a "You deserve it" chant from the crowd, which made virtually no sense. Well, she did mention something about winning the Royal Rumble, so maybe that's what the fans were addressing. I don't really know. I still hate that chant. But the whole thing kind of fell apart with all this cable access acting once Dakota Kai came out and the rest of Damage Control joined the fray. Like, the promo exchange with Dakota and Bayley here was awkward. I think that's really the best way to describe it, man. Dakota was getting wutted a lot. People were not really into what she was saying. I didn't really buy the performance. It sounded very stagey and very scripted. I get what they were going for, saying that she was all about the original 3-person unit when the group was just her, Io, and Bayley. And the Kabuki Warriors coming in to poison Io's mind kind of fucked everything up. But Bayley wants to know where Dakota stands now. Of course, that's when the heels come out and surround Bayley. Dakota goes out to grab a chair and tease like she's about to turn on Bayley, but she ends up running off the heels. And again, this really just did not come off well live. Very hokey, very staged. Like, I get the story they were going for. The whole "what side is she on" thing with Dakota Kai. All right, we'll see where it goes. I am still interested in Bayley versus Io for the title in Mania. But a lot of the interplay going on right now with the inter parties, it's not working for me. And again, it really goes back to that conversation a minute ago I had with the level of talent depth in the current girls division right now. Like, Bayley's the biggest star out of everybody involved. Io's the champion, so I guess you have to factor her in as the second biggest star. But when you compare those two to Kairi, Asuka, and Dakota, I mean, the whole thing just comes off like Bayley doing business with a bunch of job girls. The people don't care about Dakota. They don't care about Asuka or Kairi. So anytime they make the story about them, the people just kind of sit on their hands, not really reacting. And that was the problem they ran into here. They gave Dakota like 2 minutes to speak, and Nobody cared. She's been a total non-factor in damage control for so long. I think most people just kind of forgot she existed, if I'm being honest. Like, I don't even remember the last time she wrestled a match. So I don't know. Bayley's the one people will tune in to see. The rest of the girls involved, I don't know how they're going to get the fans to care about them. So at this point, watching on Saturday morning, I was a little pressed for time. When I saw the next match on the card was Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne versus Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano, I said, I've been a fan of Ciampa's for a long time. Gargano's somebody I've been hit and miss with over the years, but I always kind of dug the hashtag DIY thing. Dunne and Bate are good wrestlers, but they've given me no reason to care about anything they've been involved with on the main roster as a tag team yet. So I'm going to skip to the finish to see what happens. Unsurprisingly, Bate and Dunne beat DIY clean with the bitter end. In the final moments, I saw several thigh slap super kicks from Gargano, which kind of pissed me off. And, I mean, have DIY ever been on SmackDown to wrestle as a tag team yet? Is this more of that cross-branding bullshit they're doing right now where Raw guys are coming over to SmackDown for no reason? And we're just supposed to turn a blind eye to it? I don't know. I mean, I didn't even realize Ciampa and Gargano were a team again. I thought those guys split up and went their own way. Like last time I remember seeing Gargano, he was swimming in the ocean with a shark fin on, trying to prevent Indy Hartwell and Dexter Lumis from fucking each other. Like now he's wrestling on TV with Ciampa as their original tag team from NXT years ago. I apparently missed a lot of stuff in between. But with that said, our TV main event was Randy Orton versus Sami Zayn in the second of the Chamber qualifying matches. There was also a pre-tape where Owens and Dirty Dom were jaw-jacking with each other. And then R-Truth showed up and did some horrible comedy with KO. I tuned most of it out after Truth showed up. So, Orton and Zayn, babyface match. Tough situation to be in if you're a fan of both guys, because, I mean, you really didn't want either guy to lose. I'm not a Randy Orton fan, but, you know, I can at least recognize that he's over with the current WWE crowd. Again, a lot like the opener with Drew and AJ. Both guys know what they're doing. The wrestling's good. Both guys are over with the crowd, so that helps. You know, they worked the story with Sami dropping Orton's spine first on the announce desk so Orton could sell the back for a while. They end up doing the sequence and near falls later on once both guys are trying to kick it into the third gear. Sami gives Orton the big suicide dive out to the floor, which probably set up the spot where Orton could return the favor by dropping Sami back first on the announce desk. And it's back and forth for a little bit until Sami goes for the springboard off the ropes, but then he eats an RKO from out of nowhere for the 3 count. So Sami's Elimination Chamber dreams are shattered. Whereas 1 year ago, he was main eventing the fucking thing with Roman for the top belt. Poor guy couldn't even qualify to be on the card this year. Sucks to be him. But you kind of had to figure Orton was winning, though. It's still really weird seeing Raw and SmackDown guys competing in this thing. I'm not really sure how much suspense there is trying to discern who's winning the Chamber match right now. I mean, haven't they been teasing Drew and Seth on Raw for weeks? I guess when you throw Orton in there, it adds a little bit of a guessing game. Like, he and Rollins have history. They, I think they wrestled each other at WrestleMania 1 year, right? So there's that. But looking at the remainder of the talent pool right now, what would the second choice be if it's not Drew? Kevin Owens? I mean, he just lost to Logan Paul at the Rumble, so, I mean, he doesn't seem like a credible challenger right now at all. Bobby Lashley's been irrelevant for a long time. LA Knight would be an interesting choice if they wanted to throw a curveball at us. But I still think they're positioning him to go after Logan Paul for the US strap. Like, I just don't see any other options aside from Drew. I mean, he's got a world title to save, damn it. We can't hold that off for too long. That'd be crazy. That'd be almost as crazy as them waiting for an entire 2 years to let a wrestler finish their story and win the title they took from his daddy in the garden. Or something like that. But as I reflect back on the show, they definitely gave me a little bit of talk about here. The Chamber show in Australia is, what did they say, 2 weeks away? And they kind of need to step up their game if they're going to try to get hype going for this thing. It's going to be a packed crowd, I know that. Hopefully the thing doesn't run for 4 goddamn hours this time. But I'm just kind of looking ahead to Mania right now. And a lot of the focus is being put on the Bloodline Rock Cody storyline. And it's taken so many twists and turns in just the last week. It's hard to say where it's all going. Even with them officially announcing it's Cody and Roman as the main event, there's still that suspicion that Rock is going to get involved. And it's leaving people with plenty of questions. And just like our good friend Rowdy Roddy Piper once said, just when you think you know the answers, I change the questions. So NXT was a hoot and a holler edition this week. Just wanted to give Captain Redneck a big shout out there. And when I say a hoot and a holler, I mean it was much better than last week's episode. But not by much. Last week, I remember being a rather ghastly episode. There was about 30 minutes of nonstop straight bullshit, and then a relatively okay main event angle that solidified the main event for NXT's February 27th show. So I was kind of on pins and needles with this one. But man, the more I watch of these old classic NXT shows from the black and gold era, the more I'm starting to think hardcore fans are some of the most delusional fans out there. The ones that say this was the golden era of NXT. Either they have low standards or I'm just way out of touch. But as of now, we have 2 primary storylines that I have any relative interest in. There's Bo Dallas and Adrian Neville for the NXT title, and then Cesaro and Sami Zayn. Everything else happening on the show right now is absolute drivel by and large. And again, after last week's show, I was kind of hoping they would turn this one around and get back on track with showcasing the important matter. I can tell you what did not get the show off to a promising start was the opener, a 6-girls tag match with Natty, Bayley, and Emma versus Summer Rae, Sasha Banks, and Alicia Fox. Apparently, Alicia was an honorary BFF. Cannot believe I just said that without puking in my mouth. Now, of course, here's the dumb part. The match on February 27th is Emma versus Paige for the NXT Divas title. So, I mean, you would think, natural booking 101, wouldn't you want to maybe have Paige be involved in the match somehow? Maybe have her link up with Summer and Sasha to keep things a little consistent? Not that I consider Paige a beacon of wrestling prodigy, because, I mean, I still think she's incredibly overrated. She was certainly more talented than Alicia fucking Fox. So, I gave it about a minute to see whether or not they would impress me with something out of the gate to keep my interest. And after about 30 seconds of Summer Rae's ditzy offense, I said, all right, I've had enough. Can't do it. Fucking 2 minutes into the show and I'm already at my peak tolerance for terrible, sloppy ring work. So I skipped to the end. Through a commercial break, by the way. And it appeared that Alicia's honorary BFF ticket had expired by the end of this segment, as the rest of BFF dump her and leave her to get massacred by the babyfaces. Emma wound up submitting her with the Emma lock. I wrote down, sucks to be Alicia Fox. What a geek she turned out to be. So that was the first 10 minutes of the show right there. I cannot account for what happened in the middle, but since Summer Rae and Alicia Fox were involved, I have to imagine it was not good. Then we came back for, I believe, the 73rd installment of Aiden English versus Big Cass, who they are still calling Colin Cassidy. If there's one name change that WWE made for the better, it was changing him from Colin Cassidy to Big Cass. When I take one look at Cass, I can tell you the name that does not immediately come to mind is Colin. So yes, as noted, these guys have been feuding for what seemingly feels like years now. Every bit of it sucked. The matches have been lousy. This was no different really than the previous matches we've seen these guys have. It goes about 2 minutes. It's relatively uneventful back and forth stuff between both guys. Cass makes a little comeback toward the end, gets cut off, and then pinned clean with the director's cut. Yes, they have now had Big Cass do about 73 clean jobs to a guy half his size, who is also a heel. I'm like, I mean, I'd like to say that I'm baffled by this booking call, but it's almost like I'm living in a warped reality. Like, I'm clearly seeing the same shit on my TV every week these guys wrestle. Yet I still can't believe it's actually a thing that's happening. Big Cass, who is clearly more over and more visually impressive looking than Aiden fucking English, that guy is the one they're having do the consistent clean jobs. Meanwhile, you got this boring, vanilla, unimpressive looking squirt named Aiden English, who looks about as threatening as a war prisoner. And he's getting put over on multiple occasions, despite the fact that the gimmick is ass and nobody cares about it. I don't understand it for the life of me. I mean, they've absolutely neutered Big Cass on this program. I hope they move on from this feud and never speak of it again, because it's fucking awful. But let's move on to something good. Let's talk about this Sami Zayn Antonio Cesaro face-off. It's been several weeks now, and the message has been loud and clear from Cesaro. He refuses to accept Sami's challenge for a rematch. Sami's been begging and pleading for Cesaro to give him one last shot. Just one more opportunity. For all the marbles. Give Sami a chance to prove that he's able to thwart his one career setback. But Cesaro won't let him have it. And that was more or less Sami's opening spiel here before Cesaro came out. He said no matter how many times he replays that footage from their 2 out of 3 falls match, he can't help but get over the fact that he was one split second away from getting the job done. But he failed. And he can't move on from that until he gets one last shot. Just one more match, as the old cliche goes. And I will say this about Cesaro's performance here. I love this version of Cesaro back in the day in WWE. It's, if you actually think about it for a minute, it's got that same gimmick interplay with what they're doing with Gunther right now. Like, he's clearly a pompous, arrogant heel. At the same time, everybody knows how gifted he is as an in-ring talent. So whenever the conversation is brought up about how good Gunther is in the ring, like, nobody boos it because everybody knows it's true. But it's the same thing with Cesaro. Yeah, it's easy to hate the guy for being an asshole, but they also respect his talent in the ring enough to say, yeah, I mean, the guy's a prick, but he's really fucking good at what he does. And Cesaro's out there basically telling Sammy to get over his inferiority complex. He can't beat Cesaro. He's tried and failed over and over again. The people are bored with seeing it. Cesaro's bored with it. He just wants to move on. But he's so great with the condescending delivery of, Sammy, you're a great competitor. You're a great talent. You're a great athlete. But only in NXT. You are not on my level and you never will be. And he's just stirring that pot as Sammy mentions their history of traveling the world together on the indie circuit. You're basically acknowledging that they know each other like the back of their hand. But what Sammy doesn't understand is that if Cesaro is so confident that he's better than him, why won't he just accept the rematch? Valid question. So as they're going back and forth and the fans are getting more wrapped into it, it eventually leads to the swerve where they're about to pinky swear that if Cesaro wins, they will move on from this feud and be done with it. And then Cesaro goes, my answer is still no. And he kicks out Sammy's leg from under his leg. Then right as Cesaro's about to leave, cue Hunter's music. Because that guy's got to take center spotlight anytime he gets. Him and his big nose. God, Triple H was everywhere this week. But he tells Cesaro, you may not want the match, but the people do. It is best for business. So we're going to make that happen. At NXT TakeOver Arrival, February 27th, it is Cesaro versus Sami Zayn, Chapter 3. One final time. And Hunter has it on good authority that Sammy's leg will be 100% healed by then. Definitely a thumbs up segment. Again, I love this old version of Cesaro from back in the day. Sammy is the white meat underdog, blue-collar babyface. Like, the dynamics work so well here. And you can really tell the fans wanted the match, too. It wasn't forced or artificially contrived. It's exactly like the Roman Cody thing. I mean, because the people knew how great a worker Sammy and Cesaro were, after they already were chanting match of the year in their 2 out of 3 falls deal, I mean, you figure they were going to be bad about it whenever that final match of the series came. So it was really well done. People were begging for it. They stalled on the announcement for a while by having Cesaro duck Sammy and try to avoid him. It was a great way to set it up. Try to have Cesaro dodge a bullet one final time, only for the authority figure to step in and say, actually, nah, here's how it's going to go down, brother. So that'll be a fun match to go back and watch again. I remember people were raving about it at the time, saying that was kind of the match that put NXT on the map as a must-see program every week. So, take it at face value. It's the marks that we're talking about here, so we'll see if they were right on that one. So after about the 17th Elimination Chamber infomercial, we finally get our next match on the program. It is the Perfect Dud Ty Dillinger versus CJ Don't Call Him Juice Parker. It is incredible to think they're still running with this fucking gimmick. I mean, at this point, it's almost sad. You could tell Parker was over it by now. He was in pure clock in, clock out mode. And I think the fans were too, trying to amuse themselves here by chanting "Purple Power" at Dillinger because he was wearing purple ring trunks. And anytime Parker was on offense, the people either screamed no or just flat out booed. And then after putting away Dillinger with the third eye palm thrust, the announcers then said, and I quote, "CJ Parker is on a roll." A roll, you say? He has now gotten 1 victory in a row. Quite the roll. And then he got on the microphone afterwards and asked why the people don't love him. To which I said, probably because you suck. And so does your gimmick. And then he did a total 1970s greeny-weeny hippy-dippy parody promo, calling the fans assholes for destroying his planet, to which actually spawned a USA chant, which I found rather amusing. And, it was mainly a promo geared toward all the liberal climate change activists out there, some of which may have been in the building, but I don't think even they gave a flying fuck about this CJ Parker promo. Absolute death TV. God, so is his gimmick. And I do think management was starting to catch on by this point. He said the earth is going down the tubes. And at this stage in the game, so is Juice Robinson's career. Glad to see he got out of there relatively unscathed. The one time where a guy going to New Japan actually helped his career. But don't tell the Marks I said that either. And then with about 5 minutes remaining in the program, we close things out with a Wyatt family segment, making an NXT cameo this week. It is Rowan and Harper versus, as I noted, Jason Jordan and Friend. I'm not sure who Friend was, but it wasn't important. Just a total one-sided beatdown. Despite them being heels at the time, the Wyatt family was over like wildfire with the Full Sail crowd. And I don't think it was just the Fireflies that spawned that reaction. They were just really hot during this period because there was no one else like them on the main roster at that time. And because they came from that NXT developmental system, they had that inbuilt relationship with the crowd. They weren't exclusive to that. Like, there were dozens of guys who were always over in NXT, regardless of whether or not they were face or heel on the main roster. I think over time they kind of just stopped addressing that altogether and just kind of ran with it. But, yeah, Harper and Rowan went over. And then Bray gave the Sister Abigail to Jordan, closing it out by doing some of that classic Wyatt family verbiage where Bray's speaking in tongues and you don't really understand what he's saying a lot of the time, but it's hella captivating. And he said the Wyatts never forgot where they came from. NXT will always be their home. So it was, in essence, a babyface promo. Not really sure what it accomplished at the end of the day, but it was fun seeing him show up here. And at the same time, very sad when you look at it with modern eyes and you realize 2 of the 3 guys involved in this faction are dead now. And the other one's been irrelevant for years. It's a crazy world we live in, isn't it? Like, who'd have ever thought 10 years down the road from this point, 2/3 of this original faction would no longer be with us? Both of which were sudden tragedies, too. And, like, obviously, when you're talking about Bray, it's a touchy subject because it wasn't all that recent. But we also know how much Brody meant to him as well. So, I don't know. Very surreal in a lot of ways. Like, definitely not what I was expecting going into the show. From what I remember, there was never really any advertisement that the Wyatt family was going to appear on this episode. But seeing them down there in front of that crowd, it goes to show just how much of that original core FCW NXT class really meant to the fans. Before the majority of them got ruined on the main roster, not named Roman Reigns and or Seth Rollins. But, the whole show was primarily carried by one thing, that being the Sami Zayn Cesaro promo. The rest of it was kind of status quo NXT. Everything I talked about during that opening rant. I guess the Wyatt family surprise was a special throw-in to send the people home happy. Didn't really have any story impact on the current program, but it was cool seeing them. With that said, the February 27 show has a lot of buzz. They are really trying to make this a must-see deal. And I remember when people were talking about this and really amping it up as a must-see event. So there was a lot of pressure going in when they originally announced that whole takeover idea. I think the people were so jaded by the main roster bullcrap at that time. They were trying to hang their hats on anything. And to their credit, they did not disappoint with those original takeover specials. Obviously, it didn't hold over forever. They ended up having a few duds along the way, but for the first few years they ran those shows, the takeovers were the big selling point for those disgruntled hardcore WWE fans. And it all kind of started here with NXT TakeOver Arrival. Kind of a marquee event in a lot of ways. So we'll talk about that show in a few weeks. In the meantime, we'll kind of wrap things up here. Thanks everybody for tuning in to watch the show. Make sure you comment, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we will be back on Friday for the continuation of our retro review series for the territory footage. And we'll be covering the upcoming Elimination Chamber show in a few weeks. Before you know it, it'll be WrestleMania 40. Or WrestleMania XL, whatever we're calling it. So, good stuff. Thanks for watching, everybody, and take care. Peace out.